It's finally Friday. It's Friday, Friday.
Thank God it's
All right, welcome back to the Friday Show, presented this week by NYRA's loyalty program for horsemen. I'm Scott Jagow, along with Ray Paulick. We're glad to have you with us. Coming up, lots of stuff to talk about. It's a big weekend in the racing world. First, Ray, this week we had a story about trainer Dale Romans advocating for fellow trainer, suspended trainer Rick Dutrow. He's got a petition going with about 1,000 signatures now to commute Dutrow's 10-year suspension. He served about half of it so far. What do you think about this?
Well, one of the things that Dale put up on the change.org petition was that when he was suspended, the New York State Racing and Wagering Board, which is now the New York State Gaming Commission, it's changed, was out to get Dutrow. And I don't think there's any question about that. They were tired of him, and I think what they looked at this as a lifetime achievement award, 10-year suspension, not just for the medication violation that he had that they cited, and the syringes that were discovered in his desk drawer in his office, but for past transgressions, for things that he had been suspended or fined for previously, including he and the late Daniel Borislow pulling off a betting coup in the 2005 Queen's Plate with Wild Desert. You know, they falsified where the horse was stable. They hid workouts, and Borislow bragged about making $100,000 in bets on the race, and the public got the shaft in that. So, you know, it's things like that he was suspended 10 years for. It wasn't just the one thing. And they were out to get him, there's no question. Whether or not it was right or wrong, he had a lot of stuff on the record that he shouldn't have done.
Yeah, I mean, I think he had kind of a stack of things to look at. I don't think any of them were, you know, so egregious, you know, that some of the things we've seen in recent years, like people using frog juice, there was nothing to that level. But it all added up, and on top of it, they just didn't like him. I mean, I really think that that's part of it. He's brash. Obnoxious was the word that was used at the time when this suspension came down. But on the other hand, I know that Dale, a guy I respect a lot, and other people, I've heard from other people on this subject too, who think, you know, Rick Dutrow is a hell of a horseman. And maybe he had some problems running his barn in an efficient and proper manner, clearly, with the number of violations that he had. You know, so I'm kind of on the fence about this, because when I look at a guy like Roman Chapa, who was caught using a buzzer twice, and also had a nail in a whip, and used on a horse, and he gets, for the third violation, he gets 5 years, and Dutrow gets 10. I have a problem with that.
Yeah, yeah. You know, if Rick Dutrow took care of his business as well as he took care of his horses, he'd have no problem. Everybody, there's a lot of owners that I've spoke to that had horses with him, and they said that there's no better horseman in the game. He takes good care of his horses. To me, he's not a cheater in terms of medication. Was he milkshaking horses during the era when there was a lot of milkshaking going on? I would say probably, but that's just my opinion. But a lot of people were doing that. I don't know. They singled out Rick Dutrow because they didn't like him. I'm not sure why exactly. I think he served 5 years, and to me, I think that's enough.
And he's done some things community-wide, wise. And, you know, when you think about the criminal justice system and when people are put in prison, there are things that you can do, community service, etc., that can, and education, and take time off your sentence. I think it's appropriate here. I'm guessing that he has learned his lesson. I still don't like commuting sentences like this because I want to be tough on trainers. I just think that this one was overreaching in the first place, and maybe it needs to be cut down. And when you think about, you know, like Big Brown and the Derby back in 2008, when he openly admitted to using steroids, well, they were legal at the time, and I think people just didn't like the fact that he was honest about it, and it gave the the racing industry kind of a black mark, and I think that was also something that was held against him. Well, what do you think? We have a poll on our website. Let us know. Do you think Rick Dutrow's sentence should be cut short or not? All right, Ray, let's move on and talk about this big weekend. We have the Florida Derby. We've got the UAE Derby. We have the Dubai World Cup. But before we get to that, I just wanted to ask your opinion about the news this week that Winx, the Australian supermare, will not be traveling overseas. We were all hoping to see her at Royal Ascot.
Yeah, I think it's a shame, but the reason they gave was they're concerned about her health, and you have to put the health of the horse first. I have no problem with that. It is a shame. She's an international superstar. The world is not going to come to her. If she wants to prove that she's really the best horse in the world, she has to leave Australia. So in my mind, she's the best horse in Australia, but she's not the best horse in the world.
Well, I think she is the best horse in the world, and it's just the eye test. If you just watch her turn a foot in the stretch, I mean, she's going by everybody. And it's not like she hasn't beaten anyone. She has won 17 Group 1 races, which is more than any horse ever. And then you look at some of the horses that she has beaten. Hartnell, a horse that ran very well in the Melbourne Cup. I know there are a lot of horses in our country who would not even make it the distance of the Melbourne Cup. So I really don't, people commenting about this and kind of denigrating her record really bothers me, because she also beat the winner of the Breeders' Cup Turf, and I think about 50 Group 1 winners. So it's not like her resume is shoddy. There are plenty of horses that don't travel from the United States to overseas to compete. So, that I don't have a problem with her resume whatsoever. Okay, let's talk about the Florida Derby. Who you got?
Going into the Fountain of Youth, I like Strike Power, Mark Hannig's horse, who had only sprinted up to that point. This was his first two-turn race. I thought he acquitted himself pretty well, ran on the wrong lead down the stretch. He's come out of that, according to Mark, and is trained really well. I think the second time around 2 turns, he's going to be even better, and I like him to pull a mile upset.
I'm going to go with a little bit of a long shot in Storm Runner, who is getting a jockey switch to Tyler Gaffleone after a terrible ride from Joel Rosario in the Fountain of Youth. He apologized to trainer Dale Romans, and he should have, because it was awful. So I think Storm Runner is going to run much better at a price on Saturday. How about the Dubai World Cup?
I like West Coast. Bob Baffert has won this race before. It's going to be back-to-back wins for him in the race. He knows how to win this race. West Coast is an improving horse. He loves the distance. I think he's a standout to beat Forever Unbridled, who will be making her last start.
I got a long shot in here. A local horse who's won several times over the track, who's very under the radar, and his name is North America. Satish Seemar, very good trainer. Watch out. North America could be the upset pick in the Dubai World Cup on Saturday. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of the Friday Show. It's presented by NYRA's loyalty program for horsemen. Thanks so much for joining us, and we'll see you next time.